Welcome again to our series of Bible study with the focus on what the Bible's message to we who would seek a greater growth of spirituality into becoming His beloved disciple, answering God's call to discipleship. We are at the end of Exodus now. We've had the miraculous deliverance of the Israelites from the Egyptian oppression that has lasted for 400 years. We've had the miraculous Red Sea crossing, and now the Israelites are at the foot of Mount Sinai, near the bottom of the Sinai Peninsula, near the Red Sea. They have been there for some months, and they have received the Ten Commandments. Now, God is in the process of giving a very lengthy series of commandments and laws, both spiritual and civil, in the building of a country. And He has given the plans for the first church, if you will, the first sanctuary, the tent of meeting, over which the cloud by day and the great column of fire is centered. They are in the process and are completing the building of this place of worship, which is the first place of worship for a large group of people in the Judeo-Christian faith. But there is an interesting 3 verses connected to the building of this tent. Mallory, if you could show us the tent. It looks like a tent, doesn't it? And it has all of the elements, as we discussed in the last segment. It has all of the segments, all of the things that make up the church where you currently worship. It has the area, the holy area where the sacred rites take place, and it has the other spaces for the other activities of the church. But these 3 verses concerning what looks like this humble portable tent, I think you are going to find shocking. I found it shocking. But here it is in the Bible. Exodus 38, verses 24 through 26, and I'm going to read them to you, and then we're going to discuss it for a minute. God is telling Moses about the materials and the finery for all of the fabric, all of the construction of the Ark of the Covenant, how it's to be set up, what wood it's to be made of, the coating of gold, all of the things that God is specifying concerning this sanctuary for worship of Him. And He gets to the part about the basic materials and workmanship for it. Verse 24 through 26. All the gold that was used in all the work of the holy place, that is, the gold of the offering, was 29 talents, 730 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. And the silver from those who were numbered of the congregation was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. And a bekah for each man, that is half a shekel, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, from everyone who was over 20 years of age, 603,550 men. Now we add to that the women and the children, it gives you some idea of why we're between 1 and 3 million of the people. But this gives us the basic layout of the valuable, very valuable things that were then utilized to build this sanctuary. Now, you remember that when the scripture spoke of the gold that was collected and used for the sanctuary, it was 29 talents of gold. Well, we've heard talent before. Jesus spoke in one of his parables of the talents that were entrusted to by the master to his servants, and what they did with the talents or did not do with the talents to return them. So it's easy to get in your mind that a talent in the biblical days was like a big coin, like a $500 bill or a $1,000 bill, if there even is such thing. I've never seen or had one of those. But you think it's probably pretty big coin of money. Well, it's not money at all. A talent in the Bible is a designation of weight. 1 talent equals, get ready for it, 75 pounds. So, when that little scripture that we just read together mentioned that there were 29 talents of gold, I did a little math, which I'm not good at and is unusual for me to even attempt. But 29 talents of gold comes to 2,175 pounds of gold. Now, there's 2,000 pounds in a ton. Does that help a little? Think about it this way. They collected up and used to build this, what we've been thinking about as a humble portable tent, right? Well, in that humble portable tent is a little over a ton of gold for the various things of which they were made. That translates the 2,175 pounds of gold translates to 34,800 ounces of gold. And if you will pardon, I looked up when I figured this, and gold was selling for $1,900 an ounce. So I did the multiplication. The present day value of the gold that was collected to make this sanctuary in present valuation would be $66,120,000 American dollars. Well, you think, well, gold wasn't worth as much back then. Well, one of the great principles that I have studied, looked up, and read of gold and silver throughout history being the primary arbiters of valuation of goods and services is that throughout history, The reason gold and silver are often collected as symbols of wealth is that throughout history, an ounce of gold or an ounce of silver has been able to purchase essentially the same amount of goods and services. So why I'm saying that is it's helpful to remember that while it's a lot of money today, it would still take that much to do what was prescribed for this sanctuary. Now, the verses I just read then mentions silver that was used in this enterprise. 100 talents of silver comes to 7,500 pounds of silver, which is 120,000 ounces, and at $25 an ounce, which is about what it is now, that comes to a valuation in present day dollars of $3 million. In estimating the labor for this enterprise of building this, now we're starting to notice it's being a very fine tent instead of sort of a humble tent, that you would just kind of reach a campsite and pitch right quick. Anywhere between $10 and $30 million for the artisanship and work that would be required for all of this. Now, everything was not made out of silver and gold or even the fine cloths. There were utilizations of bronze and heavy, strong woods, primarily acacia wood, which is very strong. So the estimates that have been come up with for everything in this complex of this tent would weigh essentially about 12,000 pounds, and that's important too. Remember, this is a portable tent. And guess what? It weighs about the same as 2 Chevrolet Suburbans. That's how much all of these materials weigh. So it doesn't look as portable as it used to, does it? Because when it's all broken down and the tent of meeting, this tabernacle and sanctuary is moved to somewhere else, they are essentially breaking down and transporting the weight of 2 Chevrolet Suburban automobiles. That's an SUV, the big rectangular thing that you see on the road. Now, one of the things that you might ask in thinking about this surprising and enormous sum and valuation of gold and silver is, where did these oppressed servant class people get this? That brings us back to something that happened before the Exodus. Very obscure and very little discussed verse, and now it has significance in two ways. Before they left, right before they left, God commanded Moses in Exodus 11, he said, "Speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man," meaning every person, "ask from his neighbor, and every woman from her neighbor," meaning the Egyptians, "articles of silver and articles of gold." And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, and in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. So, before they left, God commanded the men and women of the Israelites to go to the Egyptians, many of whom were neighbors. They were all dispersed among the Egyptian population. And they were workers in these households, many of them. We now know that. And this tells us something. That the Israelites could go to the Egyptians who thought a lot of the Israelites and ask them for the silver and gold for their trip. And we now get, as we leap forward several years and this sanctuary is being built, we now have a ton of gold and 4 tons of silver, and it's not all of it by any means. What have we learned about discipleship from the opulence and cost and care and particularity that God required for the building of His first worship place? It's that God requires of us in everything that we do the very best that we have whatsoever. Thank you.